Hello, and welcome to episode 84 of the Inventive Marketing Club. We're here every week to help you build a better marketing strategy. Now, on this episode, we're going to be exploring ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an AI language model that has transformed the way we interact with technology. We'll be diving into the workings of ChatGPT and its impact on our lives and hearing from some experts who use it or might be impacted with ChatGPT and how it's really changing the game in their respective industries. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of ChatGPT. Now, that introduction is not one of mine. It's actually written quite well. And it was actually written by the ChatGPT AI, which we'll be diving into in a minute. But before we do, let me introduce two guests. We've got Jack from McCaughtrie Marketing and Dave from Selmach Machinery. Let's go through some brief introductions. Jack, would you go first? Who are you? Who do you work for? Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm from McCaughtrie, and we help businesses and organisations with their digital marketing and social media strategies. We also coach and mentor businesses so they can do it themselves, and we also provide account management, so content creation and managing social media profiles. We work for a whole host of different businesses and organisations, but our main focus is to help people to come up with, develop and implement their strategy so it's in line with their business. Mentioning sort of ChatGPT and content, I think this is something that is going to be directly impacting what I do and how I work with clients, but it's sort of understanding what that landscape looks like, the benefits, but also then the key things to be aware of as well.
Yeah, well, it's exactly why I got you on, Jack. I think it's both something that can be a benefit to you and it's going to impact on the way you work. So we'll definitely chat more about that later. Dave, who are you? I know who you are, but let everyone else know who you are.
Who am I? So I'm Dave Hargest. I work for Selmach Machinery. So we sell engineering machinery and I'm the marketing manager here. So I'm on the call because I've started to implement ChatGPT into the work that I do. Kind of utilizing its features just to essentially speed up processes for myself and just allow me to get more work done and speed up the more, should we say, more menial tasks, such as what should I post on social media today, using it to generate ideas and topics of conversation or start writing a blog for me. So for me, it's just another tool to add to the arsenal of software that I utilize on a daily basis, but it's having a big impact already, and I can see long term it will become really, really useful.
Yeah, great. Well, I want to dive into some demonstrations so we can probably talk through a bit more in detail about how it works and how we're using it. But I just wanted to set the scene and just explain what it is, because I mean, there's been a lot about AI generally and chat AI in the news. And these are the sort of language model versions where they're producing text, but there's also AI that's producing images. Now, we're not going to dive into that. That might be something we'll play with on another episode, although we did sort of touch on both of these, especially the image generation in a previous episode. I can't remember the number, but it was basically a grab bag where we're diving into, no, it's a plugin episode actually. We were looking at different plugins and one of them was AI art generation as part of that within your sort of WordPress website. But just to set the scene, I'm going to read out what ChatGPT is from ChatGPT. So this is what it said to me when I asked it this morning, so it'll give me an introduction about what it is. So ChatGPT is an AI language model trained to generate human-like text based on the input it receives. It uses deep learning algorithms to analyze and understand language patterns, enabling it to produce coherent and relevant responses to questions or prompts. I really should use ChatGPT for all my scripts. It'll make them so much neater. No ums and ahs. ChatGPT can be used for a variety of applications, including natural language processing, language translation, and content creation. The GPT part of ChatGPT starts for generative pre-trained transformer. Now, it doesn't really matter whether you know what that is. I don't particularly know what it is. I could guess a little bits of it, but that's what it stands for. But essentially what ChatGPT does, in my own words, is it just guesses the next word in the sentence or the next sequence of words based on the probability of those words occurring after each other. And basically the further it looks ahead, the more relevant or more natural that language seems. And then it adds some randomness or variability. And it's done this by studying millions, billions of bits of text on the internet or that have been written that are able to be scanned. And it's sort of ingested all that information, and it's looked at which words follow each other, how they appear in various phrases, and then built a mathematical model around that. So it's just stored in effectively, I think they use a neural system for calculating all this, a neural net. But it's basically a mathematical model that stores the probability of all those words and how they relate to each other. And then when you ask it a question and it brings back the answer, it's basically just putting out the next word after another. And it looks real. It looks like humans written it. It's pretty cool. Now, let me start sharing my screen because we'll start diving into some some demonstrations. This is the first one. But what I want to share first is actually, if you want to dive into ChatGPT a little bit further and start looking at understanding how AI works in general and neural nets work in general, this is a really good primer from Stephen Wolfram. Claire will make sure the link is shared in our show notes, but the title is "What is ChatGPT doing and why does it work?" And it starts off fairly straightforwardly, explaining how these probabilities work and how if it's got part of a sentence, then there's certain percentages for each of the next following words. So in this example, it's got the best thing about AI is its ability to, and it's got a table of different words that could come next after that based on all of the text in the world that's been written. Learn comes up with a probability of 4.5% as the next word. Now, if you were always to use the highest word as the next word, it's going to come up with exactly the same responses each time, and it's not going to be very creative. So having that randomness in where it might pick learn or predict or make or do or understand. Anyway, I definitely think it's worth diving into this. It's got a lot of information. Just get technical pretty quickly, at least from my point of view, but it is interesting. And I still haven't read all of this yet. I'm about a third of the way through, but I would definitely recommend reading that. But hey, let's dive on to the topic in hand and just start having a demonstration, have a little bit of a play with ChatGPT. Now I've got a few sort of starter questions just to see how we go. And I've also done a few searches this morning. So if it comes out with different responses that don't work, I can always dive back into those. But let's try it with those. So we've got a new client who's a Kaiban, who's not a marketing company. They're a metal garden furniture company. So maybe if I need some help writing a marketing strategy for those, I could put this in. So I've got a bit of text here. My question is to write a 3-month marketing strategy for a metal garden furniture company. Now, I will say, and you'll probably notice this as you start using these AI chatbots, is that the more information you can put in as a feeder, the more specific you can be, the better. It's going to give you better results. If you're quite vague to begin with, it might be quite vague in its answer. Let's see what it comes up with. Now, this is actually responding pretty quickly. Depending on when you use ChatGPT, it's going to be, it may not let you in if there's a lot of people using it, and that's usually later in the day when the sort of North American comes online. You might not have access to this, but at the moment it's pretty fast, pretty responsive, and it's working quite well for me. So this is pretty good. So it's actually coming up with what I asked it for. So I want 3-month marketing strategy. It's giving me some things to do. I'll wait for it to stop generating before I scroll back and look. It actually looks like it's coming up with a very similar response to what I asked for before. I think the text will probably be different, but it looks pretty similar. So there we go, it's finished. So I'm just going to briefly gloss over that. So month 1, define a target audience, conduct some market research, optimize your website, leverage social media, email marketing. Okay, that all sounds pretty good. And actually, there's going to be lots of blog posts written about that. We certainly have done many webinars about these things. And it gives you a little bit of detail, which is going to be quite useful. It might be quite a good kickstart if you don't know where to start. It's a good outline, something you can work on. Now, I think, Dave, didn't you do something like this? You were playing around with this chat to give you a bit of a marketing strategy for Selmach.
Yeah, so sort of tail end of last year, I was writing the strategy for the next year. And it was just when sort of the internet was going wild for chat coming out. So I thought, oh, give it a play and see what it wants to suggest, sort of thing. And yeah, so it gives some good responses. I mean, some of it is, I think, if you're regularly writing marketing strategies, you realise that the responses it's given are maybe quite obvious and generic. But if you've never written a marketing strategy before, if you've just decided I'm going to start a business tomorrow, and you think, right, I need to figure out how to do marketing, it's a very good sort of stepping stone to give you a rough framework to work from, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let me dive back into the screen share, because there's a subsequent question I asked it where I want more detail. So you're right, it's given us a good outline here, but I want more detail. I want to dive in. And so my second question was this one. Give more detail on how to identify my target audience, because I don't know, if I've not done this before, I don't know where to start. So let's put that in. Scroll down to the bottom. That's great. Now it's giving us some more specific information. One of the important things to know with how this works is that it uses the previous answers and questions as context for its response. So you can actually, I might try and show you this a bit later on, but you can actually, you don't need to refer to your specific content previously, because it knows, it's using it as a feeder. I've actually got a good example where I was writing my intro. In fact, I'll quickly show that while it's finishing that response off. Let me go here. So here's the introduction I asked it to write for ChatGPT. Let me just scroll down to it. Here we are. So I asked it to write a podcast introduction for the episode of ChatGPT, which it did. Very long. I didn't want to read that out. So I said, make it shorter, make the intro shorter. And it did. I didn't say how long. I've actually done a little outro here, which we're gonna do a live outro, and I'll read it out when we finish. But you can actually be quite specific about what you want it to be. You can even say what words you want it to include. In fact, if I just go quickly to the top, first thing I did this morning is give me a podcast. Right. In fact, I was very specific about this. Write an outline for a podcast on ChatGPT, which has 2 guests. One is a copywriter, the other is a marketing manager. Include 3 questions for each guest and a short summary of how ChatGPT works. And it gave me that information in that order, which was really useful. What it didn't do so much is give me specific questions on the impact of chat to a copywriter or a marketing manager. So that's why I asked it a subsequent question. Narrow questions for the copywriter and marketing manager on how chat AI will impact their roles at work. And it did. So I thought that was for me really useful. Now, I've got some of those questions, and I'm going to ask you some of those questions. So they'll be sort of coming into our conversation. But for me, I can think of these questions and I will want to say them in my own way. And I'll want to weave them into the conversation at the right time. But for me, it sort of takes a lot of the pressure off an interview just by doing this, because you can actually just get a basic outline of some of the core things that are relevant. And then you can fill in the blanks and use your human creativity and relevance and context to put that specific information in. So it's definitely very useful, even this morning. Anyway, let's go back to our example here. Let's see what it's come up with. So yeah, it has actually done this. I'm not going to read it all, but basically it gives us some steps. Define the product, analyze the market, create a customer persona. Okay, so it gives some ideas there. Conduct some market research. All sounds very easy, doesn't it? It's just say, just do this, just do these things. Use social media. I think that's one of the very easy to say, use social media, but that's going to be something they'll be doing forever. Analyze web traffic. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. And that's going to be something you can do within part of your first month and ongoing that will be useful. But it's very easy to have that sort of information. As you say, Dave, you really need to then do something else with that and use it further. Jack, you haven't been really using ChatGPT or other chat systems for your work, but is there, how do you see it impacting what you do?
I think the impact, as with anything, there's positives and negatives. I think the example that you used both here and for you, I think there's, at the moment, there are 2 ends of the spectrum where there's a great deal of benefit. So it's to speed up the process, a little bit like Dave's example. He knows what he was after. It just needed to provide him with a prompt and some loose detail, then can be tailored a little bit exactly how you've used it. So that's that massive time saver. So you know that you're busy and you know you need a piece of content, you need a document. and you just, as you were saying, you know you want an introduction, but you don't want the ums and the ers, and you didn't want to type it out. So I think that's where there's a basically speed, which obviously we're all time poor, or we want to spend our time doing something else that we enjoy. So I think that's where there's a great benefit. And certainly from my perspective, if someone wants to generate content around a topic that they know well, and that probably lends itself to being a very basic topic, and also then, as Dave was saying, if you're starting out, so if you have no knowledge but you know loosely the fundamentals, I think that's great. But then I think I've described it when I've been speaking to people, how I see it from reading around things is that there's sort of like it does 80% of the work for you, because then you need to finesse it either with detail, as you've just seen there with that marketing strategy, where that time investment, that 20% of that time is to sit down, want to read it, but also to do the thinking and to consider it, what it actually means to you for that particular objective. And then you need to go and weave it in from a content perspective. So if you're using this for a blog article or any other piece of content that you're looking to push out, it's really important that you don't necessarily just take it for granted. First of all, you've got to fact check it, which is okay. Obviously, it's scanning the internet. Yes, there's an enormous amount of factual information out there, but I think you're all aware that there's some less or I wouldn't say incorrect, but slightly different things that might be presented as facts.
Vague in some senses as well. Yeah.
And also then your brand language and that brand vocabulary needs to be weaved into any sort of piece of content. So I think it's a massive time saver when you know what you're after and you know you just need to finesse it. But I've also seen examples, and this is probably going a bit deep into a conversation, is I think it goes to the opposite end of the spectrum when there's a topic that you don't know anything about and you need something pretty quickly. And obviously you've probably seen in the press, and I know I've seen and heard things from an education perspective, where it's possibly being used incorrectly. And I think there's things there's another element of AI where chat and things that are coming from similar tools then need to be pushed through a secondary tool to ensure that it's original and unique and there's no sort of duplication. So I think there are great benefits, but I think like anything, it's a tool that can be used alongside any other tool, and to be aware of its merits, but also to have a very clear understanding of what you still need to do with that piece of information that you've just received.
Yeah, something you brought up there, Jack, I want to just bring Dave in on, and that's the whether information is true or not, or real. How I mean, it seems like a silly question, but how can you, the way it presents the information to you is as if it's fact, and you could just go away and do that if you didn't know better. How would you get around or make sure that you don't accidentally include information that is false in a blog article or content that you're creating?
Yes, it's a difficult one. I mean, as Jack said, if it's a subject you know about, then obviously, to a degree, you should know whether or not what it's saying on there is right. I mean, you know, if you've written a blog about the sky and it comes up and it says the sky is typically orange in color, you know, well, hang on, no, that's not right. But of course, the problem is when you don't know the subject, essentially, you've still got to do that research yourself and sort of double check all these facts are correct. That's where, like for myself, our industry is not overly specialist. I mean, there's a lot of companies that sell the kind of machinery that we do. So, you know, I've had quite good success in putting in like a blog topic, and it generates a generic blog, which I can then take and adapt and, as you say, weave our brand through it and make it our blog rather than a generated one. But it's definitely not at the point where you could just take what's written on there, copy paste. There's your blog. You know, job done for the week. I'll do that again next Monday. You know, it's not at that level, and I don't think it ever would be, just because.
Do you not think?
But no, I mean,
given enough time.
The problem is it works off all the information that's on the internet, and as you said, there's a lot of opinion posted as fact.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of content out there that's just rubbish. So the problem is, if it's only as good as as you put in. It's like any other system in that sense. You've got to put good stuff in to get good stuff out.
Yeah.
So if it's working off, if you consider the average level of content on the internet is okay, it's only ever going to be okay when it comes out with. For truly, great content that's going to get really good interaction and things like that, you want to be better than okay, really, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, if now everyone has access to this, pretty much. I mean, that you do have to sign up for an account, but people have access to this. There's also another chat system, which I'll briefly touch on in shortly, which Microsoft's Bing search engine uses, which gives you similar output. You've got, anyone can use it. So really, you do have to up your game, because anyone can output mediocre content now. I mean, you've kind of always been able to do that. You can copy someone else's work and just change a few words around, pop it in Grammarly, make sure you're not plagiarizing them, and away you go. But what's the point in that? What's the point? It's just more chaff on the internet. It's just like putting another social post on that's just promoting your company and shouting as loud as it can. It's not going to achieve anything. Claire, maybe I could we just share how you've been using it? Because you've been using it to generate some very functional articles that we've created, which aren't creative. Now, I'm not disparaging the work that you've done. It's just that it's stuff that you and I could write. They're just like very simple how-to guides, which are useful. So maybe if you can just quickly talk us through how you've been using that and making sure that they're actually interesting, useful, true, accurate.
Yes, so like you said, Ben, they're very sort of basic step-by-step guides, and it was a way for me to kind of experiment with the chatbot and kind of see how it worked. They are what they are. I put a simple one on here. So we've got setting up Google Analytics, a step-by-step guide. So basically, I don't want to spend my time writing that. So it comes up with the steps. I would tell it how many steps I'd like it to be broken down into. I'd even ask it to write my meta description and my meta titles. I didn't even have to think about that, which was quite helpful actually, and to come up with a title. And then after that process, obviously I have to read through it to make sure it's actually accurate. And then I went through the process of putting it through Grammarly, and it was interesting because there was quite a lot of repetitive words that it would use. It sort of have its sort of favorite default next word of like it kept saying it was crucial or important to do these things. So Grammarly sort of helped kind of refine and tighten up the sentences, because there was a lot of like padding or extra words that you didn't necessarily.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we went through a little bit of that together, and we put it in Grammarly, see what the output was, and it did have an extra padding in there, which wasn't adding in. It was fluff for no reason. It wasn't like adding some friendly informality or banter or anything like that. It was just almost where people weren't confident about their writing, that they would add more stuff in to make it seem more formal, and it didn't work. So actually Grammarly was really useful, but it's kind of AI in a different direction. It's looking at improving the content.
Yeah, so I used that to tighten it up, and that was basically my process. And I actually got blocked out of Chatbot because I sort of rattled through, and I did a lot of these articles in one night, and I was banned for an hour for overusing it.
Well done. 10 points to you.
I know, but I'd been locked out all day, so I think it was like 9 o'clock at night. I was like, right, I'll just get these done. So yeah, it was interesting, an interesting process. But I don't feel it's great for the sort of the easy projects, but I for getting more traction and for sort of standing out, I don't think it's ever going to quite be up there, because I think it loses that personal touch, and I don't think it'll ever get to that personal touch.
Yeah, and equally, you also need someone to manage it as well. It's not just going to automatically know what to write about and produce this content for you and create all the social posts and publish everything to blog articles, check everything for you. It's not going to do that. You need someone to do that, and someone to do that with intelligence and understanding where they need everything to be. So it does need some an AI master almost to run it. So I do think it's still it's great, but it's not going to produce anything great. And in fact, this is more of a conversation for the AI generative art that's being created. Where it basically is doing the same thing. It's looking over a load of artwork and then it's creating artwork based on that other artwork, much as an artist would do to some extent, but it's not necessarily going to come up with anything new, certainly at the moment. So our human brains can come up with some crazy stuff. You just watch some of the Stephen King films. I mean, there's absolutely mental stuff in there you wouldn't think anyone could come up with. Well, an AI may not come up with such things that are so far-fetched and so different or so unique, so creative. And because they are just feeding off what we've already produced. So in some sense, if you just used AI for everything, you're just going to come up with the same boring stuff all the time. So we do need that sort of creative input injected into it, as well as someone managing the process. Where shall we turn to now? Maybe can I just switch gears a little bit and have a look at Bing? So I'm just going to run through a few simple questions with Bing as well. Actually, before I do that, you touched on a good point about creating meta descriptions for the pages. Now, I help people with ad campaigns, and I find creating short, pithy ad text hard. I like editing it. I don't mind editing it, but actually coming up with it from scratch is hard work for me. So I'm using ChatGPT can be really useful for that. So I'm just going to give that a very quick go and see how that's going to come off. So let me just share that right screen, and we let's try this. So we're still in the metal garden furniture company. So we're going to write 5 Google ad text to promote what would she say, a fire pit, a fire, or fire pits, fire pits. Let's keep it simple. Write 5 Google ad text to promote fire pits. Let's see what comes out there. Perfect. Now, I actually think Google ad text, you've got basically various different headlines and descriptions. So the text is giving me here doesn't fit neatly into Google ad text slots, but you can copy and paste the bits around. And actually, that's what I find quite useful here. So there's got some good ones here. Warm up your outdoor space with our top quality fire pits, perfect for chilly nights. Shop now and get 10% off on your first purchase. Perfect. But what you can do is it's a great outline, it's a great starter, and you can use that then to get your brain going. I mean, I find that sometimes if you're just looking at a blank page, or you're looking at Google ad text, your brain just dies, or mine does. It's like, I have no idea what to put in there. And almost the best thing to do is to read, just to read what other people are doing. So I'd like go online and have a look at some adverts, and go and look at some other websites that selling the same thing, and just basically fill my brain up with that information. And eventually it starts to splurge out again. And I use this as the same way of doing that more quickly. So I find that quite useful. Dave, have you used it in that particular format?
Yeah, so for me, I think that's where it's probably the most useful, is that initial idea generation. So like, again, when I was playing around with it, start of the year, I sort of thought, right, I need to add a load of blogs to the website. I gave it one of our machines that we sell, and I said, we sell plasma cutters. Can you give me 20 blog titles about plasma cutting? And it literally spat out all these different titles. And then I was like, okay, I like the look of this, and this, because we haven't actually covered that already. Can you give me some sort of other articles that could relate to this particular article? And then it gave a few more sort of things. So it was a good way of kind of generating that initial list of blogs to then go ahead and make. And then what I'll then do is then say, right, okay, write me a blog on this topic. And then that then gives you a basis of like where to start. Because I'm exactly the same. I absolutely hate looking at a blank sheet on Word and going, right, what should we write? Whereas, if you've got something, you say, well, I don't want that. That doesn't make sense. But that does. I'll keep that bit. And then
that's a good point, actually. Once you are given something, you then know what you don't want.
Yeah.
And I almost find that with a lot of clients, that when we're coming up with an idea for a design for a website, they don't know what design they want. until they start seeing what they don't want. You know, you
Yeah.
start putting some buttons on, some colors, then it's very easy. No, I don't want that, or I do like that. So I think actually it is having someone who can just, or you know, an algorithm in this case, present ideas. It helps you rule it out. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Just to jump in there, I think when I was making some notes and thinking about this, I think I've just had a look at the note that I made, and it was just to appreciate and treat it as that aggregator of information. And of course, that's what it is. But as long as you have that in your mind when you're putting it together, and Dave, exactly as you say, you know what you want, but you just want to get there in 2 minutes, and then you can take it from there. And then exactly as Dave was describing it, and you then took the words out of my mouth, in terms of when we speak with clients, regardless of what the need is, whether that is from a large project and it's talking about website and then the website content, it could be just content planning on a month-by-month basis for a specific campaign. They might come up with the seed of the idea, or we come up with the seed of the idea, but then, and we know where the detail is, and we're all confident we can get to that third stage. But it's actually that second stage where okay, well, what's that launch pad to go off? Let's go and try and create the conversation. And that also then goes back to the aggregator point of, we speak to people then a lot of the time around frequently asked questions. And okay, we probably know all of them. We may not know the best way of putting them initially. We probably will get there once we've done some of that let's say that desk research, and then we've thought about it, put a creative spin on it. But a little bit how you've just done it there from Google Ad Text, Dave, in terms of 20 or 30 blog titles, frequently asked questions. The whole point of that is that it's a piece of content, an asset that brings people in, that allows then your site that is unique to you to function. It's just that you just want that magnet or that carrot to attract someone in. So you do want it to be basic, you don't want it to be creative. So either you get it to write the FAQs for you, but before you get there, you might want to know what the top 5 or what top 10 are around a particular topic.
Well, let's have a go.
The view of aggregators is really important, I think.
Let's have a go at that, shall we, Jack? I'll switch over to the Bing, and we'll give it the Bing, the Bing search, and we'll give it a go on that. So just to briefly explain, Bing is a a search website you might not have used, but probably have heard of. But Microsoft have been are helping to fund ChatGPT, or one of the funders in there. But they also have their own AI program. So they've sort of rolled it into Bing. And it's what's interesting about this is, as opposed to ChatGPT, which just has a static library, that it seems that it is updated from time to time, but it's a static library. So it's gone out and done the scanning of all the text, and then it's got this mathematical model, and that's static. What Bing does is actually goes out and gets fresh information. So let's give that a go. Jack, give me an example of some FAQ you'd like it to write. Or a topic.
A topic. So we would like 5 FAQs for
what topic? Spell article correctly.
5 FAQs for school furniture.
School furniture. Don't tell Whitley Jones that might be using these. So what this is doing is actually doing a search, using its own search engine. So that's quite interesting, because it can go out and get real information. In fact, some people have been using this, and there is a chat element to it where you can actually chat to it as an artificial intelligence, if you will, where it is the chat. The AI is actually able to respond based on information that they have published about the previous chat they've had the AI. So it's gone out and found the article about that they've been having with the AI. I'll try and find some articles where they've talked about that, because it's fascinating. If you're interested in AI and chatting to artificial intelligence, or artificial intelligence, I should say, then it's quite interesting. Claire, if you can just add a reminder that I'll find that article, it's quite interesting. Anyway, so what's come up here? Here are some possible FAQ article titles on school furniture. So how to buy school furniture from approved suppliers, how to choose school furniture that meets safety and quality standards. I mean, fine. You could probably get it to ask for 10, 20 more. What's interesting here is we've got citations. So we've got little numbers where it's actually got that information from. So that's quite useful. So you can actually then go and read the full, go and fact check it, if you will, go and actually see where it's come from. So this is from gov.uk, so you'd hope that it would be accurate. Let's take one of those examples and see if we can, I'll try this actually. Take the first item and write a, let's just say 500 word article. I'm not sure if this is going to come out, but we'll see. If it doesn't, I'll copy and paste it in there. Sometimes with ChatGPT, it actually puts numbers against them, so you can just refer to take item 1. Let's see what comes out. Certainly has picked the right thing. And it's going to give us some sort of article here. One thing I have noticed with Bing is it won't give you as long pieces of work, so there will be limits to it, which is probably a good thing, certainly for them. With ChatGPT, you can get much longer text out of it that's much more coherent. I find with Bing, it tends to be more list-based. But if you're wanting something that is going to give you a basic outline, this is going to do a really good job for that. And I think the other benefit of Bing is that it's easier to access. It's going to be easier for you to access this all of the time, whereas ChatGPT is going to have limits, certainly when North America comes online. So that's a pretty good example there. Okay, so I'm quite interested on some of the concerns you might have about these AI chatbots and the challenges that you foresee in the future. Maybe Dave could just lead us on this. What do you think is going to be could be a problem if people use this too much?
Yes, I mean, I sort of touched on it earlier about the fact that the content that it spits out in its raw form isn't brilliant. What it does is incredible from a technological point of view, but in terms of actual outright quality of content, it's not ready to go chuck it on a blog. No. But I can full well imagine that people go, that sounds good to me, bam, there's their blog. And the problem is, I think people then have unrealistic expectations of how well it's going to perform. I think, well, why haven't I ranked top page of Google with my generic blog that I made in 2 minutes on ChatGPT?
Yeah, that's the same as everyone else's.
Yeah. And then from their point of view, when they then maybe reach out to someone for assistance, and it's like, well, you need to write some decent blogs. They can be like, well, I've done blogs. I think it might make people quite narrow-minded as to what they actually need to invest in, be it time, money, effort, or all three. So I think, it's an analogy I used before we started, but it's a bit like the fact that you can buy virtually any tool from B&Q, but it doesn't mean you can use it effectively or, do the job as it's intended to be. Speaking from personal experience, for sure. You
can still make a mess of your bathroom with the wrong tool. Absolutely.
Yeah. At the end of the day, professionals know how to use the tools more effectively. And while you can do stuff yourself, sometimes, it's not, it might save money, but it might not be the best outcome, or it might take up so much of your time. That's the thing. I mean, time's always precious for anyone in business. And I think that's the thing. Although it saves time, it still takes time to physically do. Like, even if you use it to write a blog and when you amend that blog, you still need that time to do it. Less time, granted, but it's not the magic bullet that people might hope it is in that sense.
No, absolutely. Jack, any concerns for you? I think Dave's actually covered most of them, but maybe a concern for you.
No, I would echo that. The main point across all those points that Dave said is that over-reliance. I think it's important to appreciate that it's a tool that we've all got, whether that's power tools from B&Q or whether that's tools we use across the board. For example, I use a scheduling tool to support clients from a social media perspective, but that's also to track the data. But so we'll use a scheduling tool because we know we need to post certain pieces of content at the most appropriate time. It also saves everybody's time as well. But I don't over rely on that tool. We still post live when we need to. We don't do certain things on certain platforms in certain ways. So we don't over rely on it. But I know that it's there, that we do use it a great deal and we've tailored our use to it. The big concern as Dave said, that with that over reliance of going, well, hang on, I've created these 5 or 10 blogs and this should be performing for me. Well, it's then thinking, well, that piece of content, or certainly that ChatGPT or whatever other software you're using, doesn't know the specifics of your business. You may have the same or similar products. And that falls into where we do a lot of work, is working with organizations and individuals within that organization from a thought leadership perspective. They need to have a unique stance on a particular topic. I had a conversation that can apply to this only a couple of weeks ago with an injection molding client we work with, and there is I think we haven't got to the detail yet, but there is something called influx. I think it's influx injection molding, which for the past 12 months has been creeping up the agenda and becoming more popular for a certain set of benefits. But in actual fact, our client's own sort of technological research team have actually sort of spent a lot of time and a lot of money testing all of this capability. In actual fact, it is beneficial, a little bit like this conversation. It's beneficial, but only in a very sort of niche few areas of manufacturing. So we're going to create a piece of content when we're ready that will go. We want to be ranking for that particular word, but we're going against the grain of the market and the target. So the market within injection molding companies and also the target market. ChatGPT couldn't write that for us, but what it could do, it could help us with certain sections and paragraphs that we can then amend and add in, but we still need to put our own stance on it. Yeah. And that's where it's important that all content needs to be unique and you need to stand out. Can this play a part to save time? Definitely. And I think it'd be welcome, but it's you definitely checking it and making sure it's on the right line from a strategic perspective.
Yeah, and you definitely need that.
Pointless.
You definitely need that domain knowledge as well. I think that really helps. We better wrap up now because we're coming to the 45-minute mark. Maybe just a quick tip from all of you, just in 5 seconds or 10 seconds, just a quick tip from using AI and getting the most out of it. Claire, can I ask you first? When you were using it, what was one of the tips you found?
Well, what I really liked was if you had one thread and you drilled down and kept refining your answer, because it gives you different responses each time. So don't just take the first thing it throws at you.
Brilliant. Don't take the first thing it throws at you and sort of build that thread over time. Good. Dave?
One thing I've used it quite effectively for is if you're doing research and you want to sort of summarize a really long page of information, you can ask it to summarize it down to 100 words or 200 words, or explain it to you like you're a 5-year-old, and it can really sort of condense information down. So if you're doing research for a blog post, but you don't want to use it to write it, you can use it to synthesize the information sort of down for you. So
that's a great idea, and not thought of using it like that. That's good. So you can use it to summarize and help you understand it before you rewrite it yourself. Yeah, great. Yeah. And Jack, just very briefly, what would be what, maybe not a tip for you to don't use it, but what would be sort of your hope for AI into the future?
I would hope that it provides people with a sense of inspiration as opposed to taking things as gospel. And a little bit of what's already been spoken on this sort of call, when you first come to use it, a little bit like I am, I've got an account, I've used it a couple of times, but start like anything else in life, test the water and use it for ideas and inspiration, as opposed to going, let's say, the whole hog, and your first search is for it to write a 500-word article. And as Dave was saying, and if someone then copy and pastes it and hopes that it's going to be that magic wand for your digital marketing, test it with asking it some questions and refine as you go.
Yeah, so get a feel for it first before you start really using the content it produces. Great, thank you. Well, what I'm going to do just to finish is I've just gone back to ChatGPT here and I'm going to get it to write an outro. Now you can see I've already done that, but what I've done is I've added the word, write a fun 30-word outro for this podcast. Let's see if it changes it. And then I'll see if I can incorporate that into, it's made it even shorter. That's great. I'm going to work with that one. So Claire, what's coming up next week?
So next week, we're going to be joined by Dan Barker, who's a Herefordshire-based videographer and photographer, who's going to share with us why it's important to work with a professional when doing your business marketing.
Oh, brilliant. That's we're looking forward to that because we've had Dan on before. So that's good. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Jack. Look forward to seeing you again. We're here every Friday from 10 a.m. Thank you very much for joining us on this journey through the world of ChatGPT. Keep chatting and stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Keep watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.